Twitter does different things for different people. On one level, it's a way to send a message to many people at once from your cell phone or from the computer, and these messages are restricted by 140 characters each. We frame Twitter around the question, what are you doing? The main use is to update people on what you're doing, whether it's having lunch or thinking about X, Y, and Z. Essentially just a way for people to stay connected throughout the day from wherever they are. Mostly it's friends staying connected by sending these short little updates. Could be people you don't know, getting whoever you find it interesting to get updates from.
I like to think of it like a telegraph, you know what I mean? Like as simple as a telegraph. Jack likes to think of it as like CB radio because, you know, he loves that idea of just like checking in all the time.
The real world metaphor for Twitter is writing on the wall. People come up to the wall and they choose to read it or not. And with Twitter, you send out updates and you're not really considering who they're going out to. The important thing is that you're sending the updates. So it really lowers the expectation of the communication. At the same time, make the canvas very small, and then anything you put on it is a masterpiece. It's all about taking away the thinking and just getting people to create right away from anywhere, wherever they are.
There's certainly lots of strange cases, like plants hooked up to Twitter that tell you when they need watered and thank you after you've watered them. But a really common use case is to ask your friends or those people following you, as we call it, do you know a good plumber, or where should I go for dinner in North Beach? Twitter works phenomenally well for that because of the real-time nature and because those people, usually you have some relationship with those people who are answering you, not always, but I find it's a great way to get answers to all kinds of things. Companies use it in that way as well. JetBlue asks for feedback sometimes, and you get feedback really quickly.
Over the weekend, my favorite use was the Mars Phoenix lander. They had an account on Twitter, and as it was happening, I turned my phone on and I was out like in Union Square reading a magazine. And every time there was a new movement, they broadcasted a status. And it was one of the most dramatic usages of Twitter I've ever seen, because they would say something like, this step is critical, the parachute needs to deploy. And then you would wait like 2 minutes, you're like, oh, I hope the parachute deploys. And then you get an update on your phone, and the phone buzzes and like, parachute deployed, we're landing, next step.
When people who are not sort of these first mover types hear the concept of Twitter, I think they're turned off initially by this very simple idea. People like my friend Tony forced his family to get on. He's like, look, you gotta get on this. You always complain that I'm not emailing you people and telling you like what I'm up to all the time. Follow my Twitter and you'll know all the stuff that you've ever wanted to know. So he gets his mom and his sister on Twitter. And then once they get on, they start loving it. This is great. We're getting Tony's updates all the time. And now they start to bug their family members to get on.
Certainly, it seems like everybody has a platform. That's definitely seems new-ish, and Twitter's been tremendously lucky with our API, and even from the very beginning, people were building cool applications that added value to Twitter.
One of the things we did early on was we put the API out there, and the API was as simple in spirit as the application itself. There was like 4 functions in the API, and that was really great for us because it meant that all kinds of developers, even developers who were just like getting their feet wet with developing for APIs, were able to build something in a few hours that worked on Twitter.
We even have a lot of API applications who have their own APIs. So like Twitter Vision is a mashup of Twitter and Google Maps, and then they have an API for other people to build mashups of Twitter and Google Maps. It was built on Rails, and most of it's still in Rails.
We chose it because we were coming out of a Ruby on Rails shop. I had myself and one other programmer to work on the first application of Twitter. And the other programmer happened to be on Rails core and worked very closely with David, the creator of Ruby on Rails. So we had extreme visibility into the project, and we could really affect the framework in ways we needed to. So it allowed us to move extremely quickly, and we had 2 weeks to get something together and get something working. And we hit that right away, and it was something that was visually engaging, and it also allowed us to get the SMS aspect in. So right away we could get feedback and we could start iterating very, very quickly.
We didn't necessarily develop it to be a robust message routing system. We developed it to be more like a content management system. People talk about it as microblogging. But microblogging is just one use case for Twitter, and the most important aspect of Twitter is this global routing of messages in real time instantly to many, many different devices and having it work between them all.
It needs to be architected to be a utility class system. And that is not something we had in mind when we first embarked on this path.
And so the challenge now is, okay, We built it for this kind of limited use case scenario, but it needs to work in this kind of much more gigantic capacity. And so the challenge is now to get to that point. And there's a plan in place for doing that. It's just that it's not going to be this, we're not going to pull the tablecloth out from all the dishes and have them stay there perfectly. It's going to have to be a bit more of a process.
Ruby on Rails will most likely always be a part of our stack. It is the fastest way and the most engaging way to develop interfaces on the web right now. The backend, however, the actual routing messages to various endpoints is something that needs to be optimized. And that's what we're working on doing. And that's what a number of Ruby on Rails houses have done.
In the first boom, I think you had a lot of people who were making a bet and spending a lot of money to see if that bet was going to pay off. And today, it's sort of opposite, where you can test things really quickly and cheaply and see if there's something there. And then it still can be a lot of time and money to really grow it and to get it into something substantial. There are also a lot of small things that are perfectly worthwhile as small things. The population of internet users has grown by a couple orders of magnitude, so a lot more things are viable than were before. Where we think Twitter is that it can have impact really in a mainstream way more easily potentially than it could have been before because everybody is online.
One of the things that seems really different to me right now is that it seems a lot easier to get started. You can get a few guys together and you can build something for super cheap and then go out and see if it's worth maybe finding some financing for it, or maybe you don't even have to find financing because you can get to a point where you're making money enough to just get going. But back when we started Xanga in 1999, it was like, okay, we're gonna raise money first, and it's going to be really difficult, and then we're going to build something, and we're going to build what we said we were going to build because we raised the money for it. That can lead to a lot of problems right there, because what if somewhere down the line you completely change your plan, and it's really great, it's a great idea to change your plan, but then you feel really guilty, we shouldn't change our plan because this is what we're expected to do. Whereas now, you work fast, you can change your plan on the fly, you can get to something that's compelling enough, and maybe you only have 5,000 people using it, but you can actually point to some growth and some interest in this product, and then you can go out and say, look, there's only 5,000 people using this, but there was only 2,000 people using it a week ago. It just feels like everything happens a lot quicker, it's a lot easier. I mean, all of this stuff was kind of like the perfect epitome of Twitter. First of all, it was a side project of another idea. We decided to take 2 weeks and build a prototype and see if it was compelling. I think it would have gone nowhere if we had just said, what do you think of this idea? You say what you're doing, and I get the update. Like, so what? Who cares? You can just email. And it would have died right there. 8 years ago, it seemed like everything had to be this big, amazing, ground-shaking, huge, big vision. And now you can say, why don't we just take one part of an existing service that's compelling, pull it out, and fan the flames on that a little bit and see if we can turn that and nurture that into something else.
I think we're still pretty early on. A lot of us in the world that I populate forget how early we are. We use the internet for everything in our lives. That's not the case yet for everybody. Media consumption, of course, is happening more and more, but that's obvious, and that will happen. It will be where you go for everything. It's a central part of how you get stuff done, how you get entertained, how you connect with people. And a lot of the applications for doing that are still really primitive, and they're just first guesses, and we're stumbling our way toward experiences that work for really everybody, and a lot of these are just first or second guesses, so it'll get better.